Earlier in this chapter, when we were talking about working with OpenEffects plugins, I mentioned how there was a tool in here, the UserRenderCache, that allows us to get at near real-time playback even when we're using effects that bring our machine to a crawl. And that's what this movie is all about. We're going to explore the render cache, and where you're going to find the render cache is up here in the playback menu. And we're going to come down to render cache, and there are three states: none, the default state, there is no render caching going on. The other two states are smart render caching and user render cache. We're going to start with user because smart kind of builds upon the foundation of user render caching. So let's look at that first. I've turned it on, I've got render caching enabled, and nothing seems to have changed. And that's because I haven't marked any clips for the render cache. For instance, on this shot right here, I've got it in loop. And so here on shot 1, let's right click and select render cache clip output. I'll select that, and notice how suddenly the timecode number has gotten red here. Notice how I've got a red indicator above this clip here in the mini timeline. This indicates that this shot is marked for the render cache but has not yet been cached off. If I hit play, now it's turning blue. Blue means yes, the clip has now been cached off. So a quick, easy way to cache off a clip is just hit play and it automatically does the cache. Now the next question is, hey Patrick, where is it caching off to? What drive is it going to? And the answer is, come into your project settings, come down to general options, and down here is our cache files location. The default here is the cache clip, and it's located, if I cancel out of this and come up to DaVinci Resolve Preferences, that folder is located in the first drive listed under scratch disks in media storage. That's the default. I can change it, but the thing is, if I change it, it always has to sit at the top level of whatever drive you select. I'm going to cancel out of this. So that's how we select our render cache location. Now, one of the problems with just selecting render cache clip output, all I have to do is add one node and I break the cache. I haven't even done anything in that node, but I've broken this cache. In order to get this cached off again, I'll have to hit play, and now it's going to cache off this clip. As cool as this render cache clip output is, I'd really love to be able to render off and cache off a specific node, and then after having cached off that node, be able to add additional nodes and not break this render cache. Use this render cache for playback and color grade on top of that cache file, so I'm not constantly rebuilding the cache like I am with the render cache clip output. Well, it turns out we can do that. If I come here into shot number 2, I am going to middle click on this neat video example from our earlier movie on OpenEffects. And this grade now has an OpenEffects plugin applied in node number 4. It's neat video, Shift F. And if I hit play, take a look at what's happening up top. We're getting about 5 frames per second, all right? Really tough to tell how effectively neat video is reducing the noise in this image. I'll pause, I'll Shift F. Let's come to node number 4, right click on that, and guess what? We've got a node cache option here. It's set for auto, which in the user render cache mode isn't doing anything. So we'll force node caching on. The node itself now suddenly turns red, the clip turns red, and the mini timeline indicator turns red. You know what's going to happen when I hit the space bar? Yes, it's going to play, and as it plays out, it's building off the render cache, playing at 5 frames per second. It goes blue, and there we go. We are getting full frame rate playback, Shift F. There we go, 23976. And now I can see the effect of the neat video plugin in real time and judge the quality of this noise reduction. Also notice that the node itself has turned blue, letting me know which specific node is rendered off to the cache file, because that'll help me decide where I make additional changes. If I want to further color grade this image without blowing away this render cache, I'll have to do it after the render cache. Option S, I'll make some crazy correction in here. Let's go green. Option F, I'll hit play, and we've got full frame rate playback without having to do any caching, because right now that green node is being applied to the cached off file at this node level. If I come back and did this green push earlier, now I've broken the render cache because it's happening before the cached off node. Also notice, if I do an undo at this point, I'm not getting my cache file back. So once your cache file is blown away, an undo will not bring it back, at least not at the time of this recording. Hit play, and it starts rebuilding the cache file. So far, we've worked backwards from caching off the output of the color page to caching out the output of a specific node. What about caching out the image before it hits the first node? And when might we want to do that? Well, let's come here into shot 3. If I double click in the empty area underneath this thumbnail, it's a red clip. So red means it's going through the camera raw settings. It also means that I can set up my decode quality to such a high level of debayering that my system has no hope of giving me real-time playback. And that's what's happened here. I've set this to full res premium. There's no way my system will play this back in real time. I'll go ahead, hit play. Yeah, so like I said, no way I'm going to get this to play back in real time. Pause, you don't need to suffer through that. What I'm going to do is come down to this thumbnail, right click, and select Render Cache Clip Source. Before we were rendering out the clip output, now we're going to render out the clip source. In other words, when I turn this on, we get our red render bars. But with this particular setting, when I click play and play through, what's going to get rendered out is my current camera raw setting before any nodes are enabled. And I can even enable these two nodes. These are just a random grade I just very quickly did. I'll hit play, and it's going to start caching these off, and it's going to take it a moment. It's a bit of a long clip just to give you a look at the sustained throughput of my playback here. It's looped through. Now watch what happens on my frame rate once we get to full blue bars. All right, so I'm at full frame rate playback right now. I'll pause. Now I'm going to turn off node number 2, not broken. Turn off node number 1, not broken. Let me hit play. Full frame rate playback. Pause. Let me turn on node number 2. Full frame rate playback immediately. So it's now cached off the camera raw output, these settings, and allowing me to color grade on top of that cached file. Now I can also do it with a ProRes file. I mean, there is no reason why I can't just right click and cache off this clip source, except it doesn't gain me anything. If I shift D and hit play, I'm getting full frame rate playback. I gain nothing by caching off on this shot the clip source, but on a shot like this with the camera raw settings at very high quality, absolutely. And that's what that function is designed for working with camera raw footage. And then, of course, I can delete my render cache. I've got a couple reasons why I might want to delete them. Number one, what if my render cache gets too big? If I only want to delete those render caches which currently aren't active in this timeline, I can tell it to delete the unused. And if I want to get rid of them all, I'll tell it to delete all. And all my render caches get blown away. Having described to you what I call the fundamental building blocks of DaVinci Resolve's render cache and how it works, let's switch from the manual mode and take a look at the smart mode, where a lot more of these decisions become automated.